She ran through the airport, chased by a man who collects more than just debts, and in a single moment of desperation, she climbed aboard a billionaire's private jet. Without knowing where it was going or who was waiting inside, what began as an escape turned into a high-stakes flight across the world, and a chance at a life she never imagined. If you're new to the channel, then please subscribe, hit that like button, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Make sure to watch this video till the end, because in the final moments, you'll see the journey from an entirely new perspective. Now, let's jump into the story. The hum of fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead as Camila Rios moved swiftly through Portwell International Airport, the cool night air brushing her face every time a sliding glass door hissed open. Her airport uniform was wrinkled and stained with a splash of coffee from earlier, just one more reminder of how long this shift had been. But tonight her concern wasn't tired feet or spilled espresso. It was Dario Flint. He was here, somewhere in the terminal. Camila didn't need to turn around to feel the weight of his presence. She'd seen him before, always in a dark overcoat, his heavy step slow and deliberate like a man who enjoyed making people nervous. He wasn't just any debt collector. He was the one people whispered about. Her cousin, Leo, had borrowed from the wrong people, and now she was the one paying. For it 3 months. That's how long Dario had waited before deciding to find her in person. "You're a hard girl to pin down," he had said just 20 minutes ago near the baggage claim, his tone smooth like oil, but dangerous underneath. But everyone shows up for work eventually. Camila had pretended not to hear and walked faster. Now she weaved between passengers like a ghost, trying not to run but ready to sprint if she had to. Her ID badge, clipped crookedly to her jacket, was her only lifeline. She passed Gate 17. Restricted. Access. Authorized airport staff only. She glanced behind her. There he was. Dario. Not chasing, but watching. Like a hawk that knows its prey has nowhere left to go. Heart pounding, Camila swiped her badge against the scanner. A green light flashed. The door clicked open. Without a second thought, she slipped through. Outside, the air hit her like a wall. Thick, humid and buzzing with jet engines. The tarmac stretched wide and glowing under floodlights. Planes stood like sleeping giants, each with blinking lights and sleek bodies. She knew this part of the airport well, where private jets sat before heading off to other continents. She wasn't sure what she was looking for until she saw it. A gleaming white jet. Doors open, stairs extended, lights on inside. A jet like that didn't wait for latecomers. But the door, it was open. And at that moment it looked less like a plane and more like an escape hatch. Camila didn't hesitate. She ran across the tarmac, ducking behind fuel carts and service vehicles until she reached the bottom step. She glanced behind her one last time. The door to the building was still closed. Maybe Dario hadn't followed her past security. Maybe she had a few minutes. Maybe she was insane. She climbed. Inside, cool air and soft lighting greeted her like another world. Cream-colored leather seats, mahogany panels, everything polished to a shine. The scent of expensive cologne still lingered, mixed with something like vanilla and leather. Camila's breath caught. This was another universe entirely. She ducked behind the small bar near the rear of the cabin, crouching low, hidden by crystal glassware and bottles that cost more than her rent. The whir of engines made her stomach twist. Then, a soft hiss. The door sealed behind her. "No, no, no," she whispered, too late. The jet began to move. Camila gripped the edge of the bar as the plane rolled forward, turned, and finally accelerated down the runway. Her ears popped. Her thoughts raced faster than the plane. This was it. She was now a stowaway on a private jet, heading who knew where, with no passport, no luggage, and no plan. What would happen when they found her? Jail? Deportation? Worse? The jet lifted into the night sky, city lights shrinking below. Somewhere Dario Flint would realize she was gone, but Camila wasn't sure if that made her feel safe or more in danger. As the plane reached cruising altitude, the lights dimmed slightly. She could hear faint voices up front. One male, deep, calm, commanding. We'll finalize in Singapore. I need updated forecasts by morning. Another voice responded with quiet professionalism. Yes, Mr. Vale. I'll prepare the files. Julian Vale. Camilla recognized the name from a magazine she once read in a break room, a billionaire who rarely appeared in public. CEO of Vale Innovations. Known for his sharp mind and cold heart, this was his jet. Camilla crouched lower. She didn't know what scared her more, being discovered by the billionaire or being handed over to immigration. But she couldn't leave. Not now. Not mid-air. Her entire life had just changed course at 35,000 feet. She leaned her head against the polished wood of the bar, eyes wide, breath shallow. Maybe this would all turn out okay. Maybe they'd land, and she'd sneak out the same way she came in. Or maybe this was the beginning of something she could never have planned. Somewhere, above the clouds, Camilla closed her eyes and whispered to herself, "Don't panic. You're not done yet." The jet kept flying, and so did her fate, toward a future she never saw coming. The soft hum of the engines filled the cabin, smooth and constant like a lullaby. But Camilla Rios couldn't relax. She crouched behind the bar, legs cramping and heart pounding. The cabin felt quiet now, too quiet. She didn't dare move. Somewhere up front, voices drifted through the air. A deep male voice, steady and clear, filled with authority. "We'll reach Singapore in 17 hours. I need projections on the energy model by dawn." Another voice responded politely, calm and measured. "Yes, Mr. Vale. Shall I arrange the conference call with Oslo as well?" That name again. Mr. Vale. Camilla had heard it before. Julian Vale. Billionaire tech mogul. Head of Vale Innovations. She remembered seeing him in a magazine once, standing next to world leaders and business tycoons. Always serious. Always in control. And now somehow, she was on his private jet. Hiding. Illegally. Camilla pressed her back against the wooden paneling. Her stomach growled loudly, reminding her she hadn't eaten anything since a granola bar at noon. The scent of food drifted from somewhere nearby, something warm and savory. It made her feel even more out of place. Then it happened. Her elbow knocked a bottle on the shelf. It fell sideways, not breaking, but it clinked hard against the crystal. Next to it, the sound was small, but not small enough. A long pause followed, then footsteps. Camilla held her breath. Expensive shoes clicked against the floor, slow, steady, approaching the bar. "Is someone there?" a voice asked, calm but not casual. The kind of voice that expected answers. She didn't reply. Maybe if she stayed perfectly still, they'd think it was just turbulence. But the footsteps stopped right in front of the bar. "I know you're there, come out." Silence. Camilla's heart pounded like a drum. She stood slowly, her hands up, her face pale. I can explain," she said, her voice shaking. The man standing in front of her didn't yell. He didn't look angry. He looked surprised. Julian Vale was taller than she expected, with sharp cheekbones and dark eyes that studied her like a puzzle. He wore a dark button-down shirt, sleeves rolled just enough to reveal a silver watch. He didn't flinch. He didn't move. "You're not part of my crew," he said calmly. Camilla shook her head, her throat dry. "I'm not trying to hurt anyone. I just needed to get away." Julian raised an eyebrow. "From who?" She looked away. "It's complicated." He glanced down at her wrinkled uniform, her badge still hanging by a thread, and the scuffed sneakers on her feet. "You're not a criminal," he said finally. "But you're definitely not supposed to be here." "No," she whispered. "I'm sorry." He took a breath and nodded. "Okay. Sit down." Camilla blinked. "What?" "Sit. You look like you're going to faint, and I'd rather not." "Clean that carpet." Still unsure, she walked slowly to the nearest seat and sat stiffly. Julian took the seat across from her. For a few seconds, he simply watched her, like he was trying to decide what to do next. "What's your name?" "Camila Rios." "Well, Camila Rios, this is definitely the strangest thing that's happened on my jet." She gave a nervous laugh. "It's probably the strangest thing that's ever happened in my life." Julian leaned back. "Start from the beginning. I don't like guessing games." Camilla stared at her hands. She hadn't planned to tell her life story at 35,000 feet, but here she was, with no other choice. "My cousin, he borrowed money. A lot of it. From the wrong people. I've been helping pay it back, but it's never enough. And tonight, one of them came to the airport. I panicked. The plane door was open. I didn't know where it was going. I just climbed in." Julian listened quietly. No judgment. No sarcasm. "And now you're on your way to Singapore." She gave him a helpless smile. "Yeah, surprise." He tapped his fingers lightly against the table. "You do realize this could get you arrested?" Camilla nodded. "Yes." Julian studied her face. Then he reached for a button and pressed it. Moments later, a woman in a sleek uniform appeared. Her hair was pulled into a neat bun, her expression unreadable. "Yes, Mr. Vale? Bring our guest something to eat," he said. "She hasn't eaten in hours." The woman nodded and disappeared. Camilla stared. "You're not calling the police?" "Not yet," he shrugged. "I'd rather understand the situation first. You didn't board this jet with a plan. You ran. And now we're both stuck with that choice for the next 16 hours. The food arrived soon after. Warm bread, pasta, vegetables that actually smelled like real food. Camilla didn't realize how hungry she was until she started eating. Julian watched her in silence for a moment before speaking again. "What do you want to do, Camilla, when you're not running?" She paused. No one had asked her that in a long time. "I want to open a cafe. Just something small. Good coffee, warm food, a place where people feel like they belong." Julian looked thoughtful. "That's not a bad dream. It's an impossible one." "Maybe not," he said quietly. And for the first time in weeks, Camilla felt something stir in her chest, something like hope. She had no idea how the rest of this flight would go, but for now, she was safe. And for the first time in a long time, she wasn't running alone. The sky outside was still dark when the sudden jolt rocked the cabin. Camila Rios grabbed the edge of her seat, heart leaping. A metallic rattle echoed through the jet, followed by a flicker of lights overhead. Julian Vale, calm moments before, sat upright, his expression sharp. The captain's voice came over the intercom, slightly tense. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a mechanical issue with our hydraulic system. We are diverting to Vancouver International Airport for an emergency landing. Please remain calm and seated." Camilla's stomach dropped. "Emergency landing?" She turned to Julian, panic rising. "What happens when we land?" Julian's jaw tightened. He knew exactly what she meant. Customs, immigration, officials asking questions. Camilla didn't have a passport. She wasn't even on the flight manifest. She was an accidental stowaway, now about to be found. "I'll handle it," Julian said firmly, already pulling out his phone and tapping out a message. "You're not going to jail. Not today." "But I don't have papers. I'm not supposed to be here." Julian's eyes met hers. "Then we'll make sure you are supposed to be here." Camilla watched as he called his assistant, Noor Maddox, explaining the situation in a few fast words. Noor's voice was calm on the other end, asking for details, already working on something Camilla didn't fully understand. 15 minutes later, the plane touched down with a loud screech, brakes hissing against the cold runway. Outside, emergency lights flashed. Fire trucks stood by, just in case. But it wasn't the fire crew Camilla was afraid of. It was the people who would come asking questions. Sure enough, a knock came on the cabin door. Julian stood, smoothing his shirt like it was just another meeting. The door opened, letting in a blast of cold air and 3 uniformed officials. The woman in charge had sharp eyes and a tight bun. Her badge read, "Inspector Hollis." "Mr. Vale," she said coolly. We need to verify all passengers on board and assess your emergency situation. Of course, Julian replied smoothly. We appreciate your help. Inspector Hollis's eyes scanned the cabin and stopped on Camilla. And this is my personal assistant, Julian said without missing a beat. She travels with me. There was a spill on her documents before departure. Our legal team has prepared emergency travel ID. Noor, who had joined via a secure fax line, handed over a sleek black folder with custom-prepared credentials. Camilla glanced at it quickly. There was her name, a company badge, and even a fictional employee ID number. Camilla tried not to shake as the inspector examined the paperwork. She doesn't appear on your original flight manifest, Julian answered calmly, because she was added at the last minute. We had a schedule change in Miami and the documentation didn't update before departure. Hollis turned to Camilla. And what is your role in Mr. Vale's company? Camilla froze. She hadn't expected the direct question. Her throat tightened, but then she remembered something Julian had said earlier about the energy summit. I coordinate logistics, she said slowly, for our sustainability projects, especially our renewable tech partnerships. I studied environmental systems and regional planning at college. Hollis narrowed her eyes slightly. Which university? South Coast University, Camilla answered. That part at least was true. And your specialty? Solar panel integration in developing markets. We focus on long-term community use, not just installation. Our new pilot could reduce carbon emissions by 15% within 5 years. The inspector blinked, clearly surprised by the depth of Camilla's answer. Julian, meanwhile, sat back with a faint smile, like a proud teacher watching his student ace a test. Finally, Hollis closed the folder and nodded. The documents are in order. You'll be allowed to stay in Vancouver overnight while the aircraft is repaired. Camilla let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. As the inspectors left, she looked at Julian with wide eyes. Did that actually work? You were brilliant, he said simply. She laughed, a little giddy, a little dizzy. I thought I was going to pass out. You handled it like someone who belongs in boardrooms. She looked down at her borrowed clothes and rumpled shirt. I don't exactly look like I belong. You do now, Julian said, his tone softer. Later that night, in the warmth of a luxury suite at a Vancouver hotel, Camilla stood by the window. Snow fell gently outside, dusting the city in silence. Inside, it was quiet, safe. Julian handed her a mug of tea. You know, he said thoughtfully, I've had assistants before. None of them ever talked about making the world better. Camilla smiled. Most assistants don't sneak onto your jet. He chuckled. That's true. She hesitated. Why are you helping me? Julian paused. Because you don't belong in the life you've been running from. You belong in one where you get to build something that matters. Camilla didn't know how to respond. She only knew that somewhere between Miami and Vancouver, everything had started to shift. Not just her location, but her life. And, maybe, her heart. By the time the jet lifted off again, the sky over Vancouver was a soft silver gray. The snow had stopped falling, but the world below still looked dusted in powdered sugar. Inside the cabin, everything was calm, but Camilla Rios was anything but. She sat in the same seat as before, staring out the window, her thoughts racing faster than the jet. The last 24 hours felt like a dream she hadn't quite woken from. A billionaire, a private jet, an emergency landing. A lie that had somehow turned into a believable truth. And now she was back in the sky, heading to Singapore. Across from her, Julian Vale sipped coffee and read something on his tablet, but his eyes kept drifting to her. She could feel it, even when she didn't look. Thinking about Vancouver? He asked. She gave a small smile. Thinking about everything. He nodded, setting the tablet aside. You handled yourself better than most trained executives would. Camilla raised an eyebrow. Most trained executives don't hide under minibars. Julian chuckled. True, but most of them also don't know what a 15% carbon reduction could mean for the planet. You do. Camilla glanced down at her hands. I've always cared about things like that. Life got in the way. Julian leaned forward. You know what I think? I think life didn't get in the way. I think it was preparing you. She looked up. For what? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his briefcase and pulled out a leather folder. Inside were pages of designs, blueprints, concept sketches, and logos. For this, he said. Camilla flipped through the pages, eyes widening. It was a proposal, a sustainable cafe project. Solar-powered, locally sourced, designed for community connection. Her dream, but bigger. Julian, what is this? A proposal, he said softly. To build something with you. Not just one cafe, a model, a chain. We'd hire people who need a second chance. People like you, who have more to offer than their current situation allows. Camilla's voice caught in her throat. This is real? As real as it gets? She stared at the pages again. She could already see it. Warm lights, wooden counters, the smell of her grandmother's recipes in the air. A place where people came not just to eat, but to feel seen. And what would I be? She asked. The menu designer? Julian smiled. The director. The heart behind it. Camilla laughed, half in shock. This is crazy. Is it? Julian asked. Because it feels a lot like destiny to me. She was about to respond when her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and froze. A message from her cousin, Leo. Dario found me. He says you have 48 hours to pay, or he'll come after the family. I'm sorry. I didn't know what else to do. Camilla's chest tightened. All the hope she'd just felt drained away in seconds. Julian saw her face change. What is it? She handed him the phone with shaking hands. He read the message, his jaw clenching. Then he stood up and walked to the cockpit without a word. Camilla followed, panicked. Julian, you can't fix this. But he was already dialing a number. Transfer $50,000 to the account I'm about to text you. Yes, personal funds, immediately. He hung up and turned to her. It's done. Camilla stared at him. You can't just throw money at this. I didn't throw anything. I protected someone who matters to me. She swallowed hard. Why? You barely know me. Julian stepped, closer, his voice softer. I know you care about people. I know you work harder than anyone I've met. I know you didn't ask for this, but you're fighting through it anyway. I know you're kind, brave, brilliant. Camilla's voice trembled. This doesn't feel real. He reached for her hand. It is. The rest of the flight passed in quiet conversation, soft music, and shared glances. Camilla felt herself drawn deeper into something she didn't expect, and didn't want to end. They landed in Singapore the next morning. At the summit, Camilla stood by Julian's side as he presented their energy project. She spoke up during a Q&A, answering a delegate's question about community implementation. Her voice didn't shake once. Reporters called her a fresh face with a clear vision. Executives took notice, but Julian only watched her from across the room, a small smile on his lips. That night on the rooftop of their hotel, Camilla leaned against the railing, the city lights stretching far below. Julian joined her, handing her a small box. Inside was a necklace, simple, silver, shaped like a small star. Why a star? She asked. Because you were hiding in the dark when we met, he said gently. Now you're starting to shine. Camilla looked at him, her heart full. What happens next? He smiled. You tell me. They stood there in the warm night, two very different people who somehow ended up on the same flight, in the same story. The sky above them was endless, and for the first time in her life, Camilla believed that maybe anything was possible.